Mr. President, this is an historic weekend in Washington, and those who are visiting the Capitol and following the proceedings, I think, understand the gravity of the decisions that lie before us. On August the 2nd, our debt ceiling expires. That has never happened in our history, and it's a very serious matter. It's one that affects our nation, our debt, and literally every family and business that live within our boundaries. So periodically, a president will come to Congress and say, I understand our obligations, which you have sent to me and I have approved, and now I ask you to extend my authority to borrow the money to meet those obligations. That has happened 89 times since 1939. Since we passed this law, presidents of both parties have come to Congress and asked for that authority. And as I mentioned, not one time did Congress say no, beyond that one technical period in, I believe, 1979. 89 times, 55 times by Republican presidents and 34 times by Democratic presidents. When you look at the presidents who have requested extensions of the debt ceiling that I've just described, the president that holds the record for the most requests is President Ronald Reagan, who in an 8-year period of time asked to have the debt ceiling of the United States extended 18 times, more than twice a year. During his presidency, the debt of the United States during the Ronald Reagan presidency tripled, and that's why he came to Congress so often. The president who ranks second in terms of increasing our national debt during his 8 years is President George W. Bush. The debt of America virtually doubled during his presidency because we waged 2 wars that we didn't pay for. We did something we had never done in our history, cut taxes, particularly for the rich in the midst of a war, and had many programs unpaid for. And so president after president have used this statutory authority to come to Congress and ask for approval to extend the debt ceiling. President Obama has done the same. And as of August 2nd, his authority to ask to borrow money will expire. Now, that is a serious moment if we default on the debt. It'll be the first time it has happened in our history. What will it mean to the United States of America to default on our debt and fail to extend the debt ceiling? Well, imagine if you decided as a homeowner to stop making your mortgage payments. Within a period of time, you'd receive a phone call from your creditor saying, did you forget your check this month? And if you say, no, I'm just not going to pay it, you understand the consequences. Your credit status is going to be affected. The United States credit status is the best in the world. We have a AAA bond rating, the highest of any nation. And because we have that high bond rating, we have the lowest interest rates that we pay to borrow money. Well, go back to the homeowner. If you've just defaulted on your mortgage, your credit report is going to look pretty bad. The likelihood that you can turn around and borrow money the next month is in doubt. And if someone will loan you money at that point, it will be at a higher interest rate because you're a risk now. You failed to make your mortgage payment. Similarly, if the United States fails to extend the debt ceiling, our credit rating will go down from AAA, the interest rate charged the United States government will increase, and what has been considered the rock-solid best economy in the world will be jeopardized by this action. What does it mean for the interest rate on the United States debt to go up? This calculation has been made by many, and I believe it's accurate. For every 1% increase in the interest rate the United States pays on its debt, we will add $130 billion a year to our debt, $1.3 trillion, roughly, over a 10-year period of time. So the failure to extend the debt ceiling, the default of the United States, and higher interest rates will make our debt worse. That's why what we're facing this week in Washington is so terrible. Now, in fairness to Speaker Boehner, his goal is to reduce America's debt. I accept that challenge. In fact, for the last year and a half, I have engaged personally on a bipartisan basis to meet that challenge. First, as a member of President Obama's Deficit Commission, the Bowles-Simpson Fiscal Commission, we sat for months and listened to testimony, and finally, 11 out of 18 of us voted for the report that was issued. What it came up with was a 10-year plan to reduce our debt by $4 trillion. Not easy. It sounds like it would be easy when you look at all the money we spend, but when you get into the specifics, it's politically painful. But what we agreed to do was to put everything on the table. And I want to tell you, I did that with some reservation. I am concerned about many things in our country, but two things in particular. I'm concerned about the most vulnerable people in America, those who are aged, poor, and sick. And I want to make certain that at the end of the day, America still has a safety net, that this good and caring nation is doing everything it can to help these people. What programs do they rely on? Well, they rely on the Earned Income Tax Credit under our tax code, the Child Care Tax Credit, Medicaid, the health insurance that covers a third of the children in America, and many elderly people in nursing homes. So when we talk about cuts in these programs, I was very sensitive to them and determined to make sure that we didn't cut any more than necessary to reach our goal. We also put on the table revenue. We have to do that. How can we ask working families in America to pay more on their children's college student loans and be prepared to sacrifice? How can we ask seniors in America to be willing to sacrifice when it comes to their Medicare program and not turn to the wealthiest people in our country and ask them to join in this sacrifice? That has become the major stumbling block in this negotiation. You see, Republican Speaker Boehner has said, I will not accept any, underline the word any, tax increase on the wealthiest people in America. I will agree, he said, to cut everything else, every other benefit for every other person, but not one penny more in taxes from the wealthiest person in America. That doesn't strike me as fair or just or reasonable. So here we are today at this impasse. And Speaker Boehner announced Monday night, when he had a press conference at the same time as the president with an announcement to the nation, that he had a plan, he called it a bipartisan plan, that he would pass in the House of Representatives. We expected that to happen Tuesday, and it didn't. And then Wednesday, and it didn't. And then yesterday, and he failed to pass it then too. Mr. President, that is unacceptable. By my calculation, we have 4 days left before we default on our debt. 4 days left before the American economy suffers this mortal blow. 4 days left before we default on America's full faith and credit for the first time in our history. 4 days left while businesses across America are withholding agreements and negotiations that create jobs. 4 days left where the American people have to worry that if we default on our debt, that the government will have to pick and choose those who will receive government checks in August. A senator from Pennsylvania came to the floor for the last 2 days and said, oh, if we default on the debt, we can manage that. Really? If we default on the debt, we'll have $172 billion to spend and $306 billion in obligations. He said, well, of course we have to pay interest on the other debts. We don't want to default on everything. Okay. And he said, of course we have to pay everybody under Social Security. Yes. And he said, of course we have to pay our soldiers who are in combat. Agreed. All good ideas. And he said, and then we'll work the others out. Who did he leave off the list? He left off the list every federal employee. That would be all of the people working at the Central Intelligence Agency monitoring terrorists to stop them from attacking the United States. That would be the air traffic controllers in our airline system across America. That would be the federal prison guards working in federal correctional facilities. That would be all of our veterans receiving disability checks, easily managed, not so fast. it wouldn't be easily managed. There would be losers in that process, and many of them are innocent people who would be lost to the frustration of this political process. Mr. President, there is a way through this, but the only way through it is if members of both parties come together and do it quickly. The spirit of compromise must be heard. That is what the American people expect of us. They didn't send us here, each of us, to win every battle under our own terms and not give. They sent us here to govern and to respect this great country. I would sincerely hope that we will approach the next 72 hours with a spirit of humility. Humility to understand that so many innocent people across America, families and businesses, are waiting on us and counting on us. We cannot fail them. No one will care at the end of the day who has the great political headline, but we will all be judged, Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate, as to whether we met our constitutional obligation to this nation and the people who live here.